Several hours later, Yuan and Tianran arrived at the military police station. She took Tianran to an interrogation room that was heavily monitored by 2 security cameras. While Tianran sat in the chair, he rested his arms behind his head and began calling out to Yuan. He started feeling sleepy and began yawning, as Yuan had been interrogating him for several hours to see if he had any connection with the cult members. Tianran asked Yuan if he could leave, while leaning back in his chair with his arms behind his head. He closed his eyes and explained to her that he still had many things to do at home. At the same time, Yuan was in another room with a police sergeant. She explained that she did not agree with this way of handling the matter. Both were in the room right next to the investigation room where Tianran was sitting on a chair with his arms behind his head. This room had a one-way glass that allowed the police department's investigators to monitor and listen to the conversations of the interrogated individuals. While Sergeant was looking at Tianran, he explained to Yuan that since ancient times, merits and demerits had been irreconcilable, and therefore, even if meritorious acts had been performed, it could not hide the fact that a crime had been committed. Yuan tried to persuade the sergeant, but just before she could speak, the sergeant explained that Tianran was only a citizen and did not have any power that allowed him to judge and kill others instead of the law. Yuan simply stared at the sergeant and didn't say a single word. After several minutes, while she was looking at the ground with a lost gaze, she explained to him that it was true that Tianran had no right to take justice into his own hands. She also added that he wouldn't have had any rights if the police officers had found the missing women before him. She asked the sergeant if the higher-ups had already issued an arrest warrant for Tianran. While the sergeant was looking at Tianran through the one-way glass, he explained to Yuan that Bureau Yang was waiting for a response from the city council. He crossed his arms and explained to her that it was unlikely that the high-ups would tolerate the presence of such a dangerous man like Tianran. Yuan looked at the sergeant and commented that currently, the world had changed and military and police forces were insufficient, and she also added that now it was difficult to say what the future of law would be like. She explained to him that even though the higher-ups hadn't responded yet, it was too hasty to condemn Tianran. She looked down and decided to give the sergeant some advice. She crossed her arms and, while staring directly at the sergeant, addressed him as Sergeant Chen and told him that he was panicking because of his dereliction of duty. She began to stare into his eyes and revealed that she had already discovered this a long time ago, so she had prepared in advance and had directly sent Tianran's violation of the law evidence to the leader's desk. She also added that she had done this to make it easier for her sergeant. She looked the sergeant in the eyes and told him that this kind of peaceful treatment would not bring justice to the women who had been murdered and trafficked by cult members. Upon hearing Yuan's words, Chen became furious and while pointing his finger at her, he started looking at her aggressively with an evil aura. He ordered her to watch her tongue and added that he didn't care about her background because ultimately he was the sergeant here and she was just his subordinate. After saying these words, Chen gave her the order to arrest the suspect Tianran and keep him in custody until further notice. Yuan simply stayed silent, listening to Sergeant Chen's orders without saying a word. As he was her superior, she couldn't refute his orders or else she would be fired. While Chen was scolding Yuan, 2 people opened the door and entered the surveillance room. One of them asked Chen what he was doing. Immediately upon hearing the voice, Chen's expression drastically changed as he knew he had gotten himself into trouble. Quickly, Chen turned around and asked his superior what he was doing here. The 2 people who had entered the surveillance room were also part of the police department. The older man with white hair, who had his hands crossed behind his back, was chief inspector of the military police department in Shandong province, named Yuan Zhenghong, and the man next to him carrying a briefcase was senior police officer called Yuan Yi. While both were walking towards Yuan and Chen, Yuan Zhenghong thought that Yang Yang was teaching Yuan very well, so he couldn't help but praise her for becoming more and more a promising police officer. Zhenghong mocked Chen by telling him that he wasn't very good at catching criminals, but rather at creating enemies. Upon hearing this, Chen started to get nervous and with a trembling voice explained to him that there was nothing he could do since this was an order from the higher-ups. Zhenghong approached and while staring at him intently, named 2 higher-ups called Yang Yang and Wang Dongchuan and asked which of these 2 higher-ups had given him that order. Yang Yang was the director of the Military Police Bureau on the south side, and Wang Dongchuan was the mayor of the south side. Several seconds passed and Chen did not respond. Seeing this, Zhenghong simply started to walk away from him, and as punishment ordered him to stand still and recite out loud all the police rules 20 times. Once Zhenghong distanced himself from Chen, he turned around and started walking in the opposite direction while cursing Yuan. While Zhenghong was approaching Yuan, he explained to her that Bureau Yang had roughly told him over the phone what had happened at the church. He asked her if she could take them to the room where Tian Ran was. Upon hearing this, she informed him that he was in cubicle 3 and also asked them to follow her. Several minutes later, while Tian Ran was lying in the chair and lost in his thoughts, he looked back and saw Yuan next to Zheng Hong and Yuan. Zheng Hong closed his eyes and with a smile asked if it was Tian Ran. Upon seeing them entering the interrogation room, Tian Ran stopped lying in the chair and answered yes. Zheng Hong approached the table and while pushing the chair away from it to be able to sit down, introduced himself as Yuan Zhenggan, Chief Inspector of the Hangdong Provincial Department. Upon hearing this, Tian Ran became alert and thought that he had gotten himself into serious trouble. He crossed his arms and explained that if this case required a high-ranking official like him to come and personally interrogate him, it meant that he couldn't easily leave here. Zheng Hong started laughing and asked him not to get nervous because he was only here because he wanted to show him a confidential file. Upon hearing this, Tian Ran was surprised as he didn't know why a high-ranking official would want someone like him to see a confidential file. Zheng Hong took out a folder containing confidential information that was considered to be a top-secret file. While he held the folder in his hands, he shared his thoughts with Tian Ran about how he believed that he must be very curious about the changes in the 2 mutated beasts they had encountered at the church. He told him that this information was now available to him. Tian Ran took the folder of confidential files and as he looked at Zheng Hong, he became confused because he didn't know why Zheng Hong was giving him a folder containing highly classified confidential information. With a cheerful smile, Zheng Hong explained to him that this folder contained information that was perfect for people like him. Deep down, he already knew that Tian Ran was also a mutant. Little by little, Tian Ran began to take out the classified files that were inside the folder. As he pulled them out completely, he saw photos of several mutants with human faces on their bodies. Upon seeing these images, Tian Ran was shocked. When he pulled out another file, he was shocked to see a mutant with human faces on its body devouring humans. Zheng Hong clenched his fists and while looking at Tian Ran, he explained that the photo he was looking at was of a mutated beast that had been found in the Koringma Mountains by a patrol officer 5 days ago. He revealed that once the police officers surrounded the mutant, they realized it was feeding on humans. Upon hearing this, Tian Ran looked into Zheng Hong's eyes and was shocked as he had never imagined that a mutant would evolve to the point of feeding on humans. Zheng Hong also mentioned that later on, police agents found traces of human faces on the mutant's back. He also revealed that the mutant was becoming more intelligent, sometimes even outsmarting the police troops. He asked Tian Ran if he knew what this meant. While looking at the confidential files, he told him that the intelligence and actions of these mutants were becoming increasingly similar to those of humans. He asked him if the mutants had been able to unlock the genetic locks. Zheng Hong put his hands under his chin and replied that it was correct, and explained that these mutants were no longer limited to merging with genes from different animals to evolve their physical bodies, but they had also managed to merge with human genes to gain intelligence. Zheng Hong believed that a new species was being born. He explained to Tian Ran that they called these creatures who had evolved advanced intelligence Beast Kings. He stared at Tian Ran and told him that they had already found at least 5 cases of these perfect mutant beasts in Yanhuang, and this number would continue to grow. After reading all the information from the confidential files, Tian Ran began to save them inside the folder and asked Zheng Hong why he was telling him these secrets. At that moment, he signaled Yuan and several minutes later, he brought a glass capsule containing 2 mutant eggs and placed them on the table. Tian Ran began to stare fixedly at the eggs, and it didn't take long for him to realize that they were the same eggs that the cult members who had turned into mutants had eaten. While pointing at the eggs with his finger, he asked Zheng Hong if they were the same eggs that the cult members had eaten. He replied yes and explained that these were 2 mutant eggs that had not yet hatched. These were the same eggs that the 2 cult members had eaten, who died after being shot by him, and once the 2 cult members died, the eggs inside their bodies stopped hatching. The investigators at the police laboratory had removed the eggs from the bodies of the 2 cult members and had been studying their genome. Tian Ran was surprised and didn't say a word, continuing to listen. At that moment, Zheng Hong revealed to him that the genomes of the eggs were mostly represented by insect and animal genes, but there was also a portion of human genes within the genome of the mutant eggs. Tian Ran was shocked to hear this and several seconds later asked where he was going with this conversation. Zheng Hong looked into his eyes and revealed that in the southern part of the city, there was a hidden mutant beast king who was creating his own species. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.